Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about animation using JavaScript. So basically when we say animation, what we're talking about is taking the pictures that you have drawn, that you've learned how to draw, and moving them around the screen. So we're going to learn how to move them up and down, left and right, and diagonally. Now in order to do that in KhanAcademy's JavaScript, we're going to use two concepts or two things named variables and the draw loop. And we're going to use those two things to help us in animating our program. So before I go there, I want to tell you basically what's happening in animation in JavaScript. If you've ever drawn a flip book, meaning you draw some pictures maybe on a pad of sticky notes, and each picture is a little different, but when you ruffle the whole sticky note, you're going to get something that looks like it's moving. So I have a video here to explain what I'm talking about.
Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. Today, I'm going to make a bunch of ugly flipbooks. They're probably going to be really short. They're going to be ugly. Let's just start the time lapse and see what we get. Ugly and stupid. That's what I'm going for.
Okay, and that's essentially what you're going to be doing is you're basically going to be redrawing the same picture over and over again with little modification to it. And that's how animation works. So before we get into how we code it up in JavaScript, I want to talk a little bit about what variables are and about coding or code execution. So these are two main concepts in coding, and it's universal. Any coding language you use, you have to understand these concepts. So variables basically help programmers identify and store data in a program. So examples of this can be maybe a score, your score in a game that you're playing, a person's name, or even when you're in school loop and you are checking your grades. That's all using variables, and it's calculating all that information for you. And the other thing here that you're going to learn a lot about is code execution. So code execution is, you have to understand that coding languages, one statement executes at a time. And as each statement executes, you have to understand what that statement is doing, how it's modifying variables, and then you have to continue that and understand how the modified variables are going to affect the program. So sometimes we'll need to execute code repeatedly, like in animation. And the way we do that is we're going to use loops. And loops basically define a segment of code that's going to repeatedly execute. But even within that code executing repeatedly, things are still going to be changing. So we're going to explain how that is. Now, what I've done is define basically 4 steps in how to get your code to go from a regular picture to animated picture. So we're going to go through those 4 steps. Step 1 is to use a variable. And again, a variable is it's going to store or hold information for us in the program. And how we define variables in JavaScript is first we have to declare or define a variable and initialize it. And the way we declare or define a variable is we use something called the var command, var. And then you follow that by a name of a variable. The name of a variable can be anything you want. There are some rules to it. But basically you want a name of a variable that represents what the variable is going to hold. So we use x and y because we're modifying the x and y coordinates or the values in those coordinates. So here I've defined 3 variables. Again, you can name it anything you want: total, counter. And initializing is also really important. Initializing means setting the first value of the variable. Many times when you're using numeric variables, you initialize it to 0. So here I say x equals 0. So the value of 0 is actually going to be stored in this variable x. So var x equals 0, semicolon. Var total equals 0. Again, the value of total is going to be stored in, the value of 0 is going to be stored in the variable total. And the same with this one. The next thing you have to understand about variables is how to assign a value to, or new values to a variable. So the way you do that is generally you have the variable you're going to modify on the left side of the equal sign, and then how you want to modify it on the right side. So for this example, what we're doing here is we're incrementing the variable x by 1. So x plus 1 is now going to be the new value stored in the value in the variable x. So for example, if we start off with x being 0, we have here 0 plus 1 is 1. And now the assignment will go here on to the left side of the equation. So now x has the value 1. If we execute this statement again with x having the value 1, x would be 1 plus 1, which is 2. And then 2 would be now assigned the value of x. And then if we continue that, 2 plus 1 is 3. Now 3 gets the value of x. So you can, as we execute this statement repeatedly, x is going to increment like from 1 to 2 to 3, etc. Here's just another random example, the value of counter, which let's say up here is 0. So 0 plus 10 is going to be 10, and that value of 10 is going to be stored in the variable total. So in assignment, you do some work here on the right side. These variables don't change their value. The only values that are the only values of the variables changing are the ones on the left side of the equation. Okay, if we continue on here, so we're going to use variables to do this. Step 2 is we're going to use something called the draw function in KhanAcademy's JavaScript. So the draw function is basically a loop that executes repeatedly. You define a draw. Here's some sample code of animation. So you define 2 variables, and then you have something called the draw function. And this code here within the draw function, which is defined by this open brace and close brace, is going to execute repeatedly. So as my program executes, it's going to do this statement, then it's going to come down in this draw function. It's going to execute this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and then it's going to execute this, 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 and then it's going to execute this, 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 and then this is the loop. So as this executes repeatedly, it's going to help animate these 2 pictures. We're going to take a look at that here in a little bit. Step 3 is we're going to use variables within our shapes, or our rect or ellipse and all the other shapes that we are using. And basically, in the past you've just said rect, then 4 numbers. But now we're going to put in our variables in it. So we're going to add x to our x coordinate in this statement. And for this ellipse statement, we're going to add the y coordinate, or the y variable. So right now, for example, x has zeros the first time we execute this statement. So it'll be 0 plus 10. And same with y, it'll be 25 plus 0. So there's going to be some math happening as each one of these statements execute. And then finally, step 4, you're going to be adding these increment statements within the draw function. So here we're going to say, we're going to start off that x equals 0, y equals 0, 2 variables, then we're going to this draw function that's going to execute repeatedly. and the value of x and y are in these rect and ellipse statements. But and in order for these to change, we're gonna increment these. So again, x is going to equal 1 here, y is going to equal 1 because it's 0 plus 1, 0 plus 1. The next time we come through, x is going to have a value of 1 and y is going to have a value of 1. So we're going to add these. This will be 11 and 26. And then x will get a value of 2 here because we'll have 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. It's going to come back around. And we'll have 2 plus 10, which is 12. And 25 plus 2, which is 27. And so these statements are going to be drawn out a little bit to the right, and then this one going down. So let me show you how this code executes in Khan Academy. I've got the code here. And here it is. Here's the exact code in Khan Academy. The variables are defined, and I have these, I have the draw function, and I have x and y variables within my rect and ellipse statements, and I have the increment going on. So if I restart this, if you can see that the ellipse is moving down, and the rect is moving to the right. And the reason is because basically as I re-execute this over and over again, the picture is going to be redrawn slightly. Like for the rectangle, it's going to, this rect statement is going to be drawn slightly to the right every single time, a little bit more to the right, and then the ellipse is going to be drawn a little bit lower and then a little bit lower. So I've expanded kind of what this looks like here. Basically, the first time we go through the loop, the x and y variables have 0. The second time we go through the loop, the x and y variables have 1. The third time we go through the loop, they have the value of 2, and then 3, and then 4, and it continues and continues. And again, we're just redrawing the same picture over and over again. So I'm going to restart this, and I'm going to show you, it may not look like it's being redrawn, and that's primarily because of the background statement. So before I do that, I want to show you that I can make these go faster by here changing this incrementing value. I'm just going to use 4. If I restart it, you notice it moves faster. Now watch, if I remove the background statement, because as I'm drawing, every time the background statement is there and it's kind of clearing up the, you won't be seeing. So if I remove the background statement, here I'm commenting it out. When I redraw these, you're going to see all the different ellipses that are really being drawn here. So basically, if you look closely, it's a bunch of little ellipses being drawn here, all of them a little bit incremented just a little bit, and that's what the draw function is doing. So every single one of these ellipses has been drawn here. So here I've drawn 1, 2, 3, and 4 of them. But as the code executes, it's going to continue. So this is the rectangle and the ellipse statements. And that's basically how, just like the flip book, you're just drawing the same picture over and over again, but slightly a little different position. And that's what it looks like animation. So let me take out the background statement and restart it, and you'll see that with the background, it's refreshing the background, so you're not seeing all those circles being drawn. Anyway, so please check the next video and to kind of review the 4 steps. I actually coded up, and it'll help you with your programming assignments. Thank you.